from his family and his struggles to his boxing career. Creed 3's trailer, you may have noticed, mainly focused on Adonis's life, but surprisingly, there was no sign of Rocky Balboa. So why is that? Well, Stallone discussed his absence in a recent interview.
You want to just be remembered as this main character. And then as I got older, I said, what a privilege to be able to do this. And then to be able to carry on for so long.
According to Rocky himself, it was his decision not to be in the third part of the franchise. Now, that just doesn't mean he wasn't featured in the trailer. That means he's not going to show up in the movie. He also said that he was confused about his role in this one and about where he'd fit in Adonis's story arc. But he's definitely hoping that the movie does well and they keep punching. Now, as heartbreaking as it may seem, from the story's perspective, the actor's decision not to come back kind of makes sense.
You can't make peace. I mean, let's be realistic here. You can't make peace when someone has been so...
Since Creed 3 is clearly looking to shift the focus to its main character. It also makes sense when you think about what happened to Rocky Balboa at the end of Creed 2, and this marks the first time Stallone won't be in a Rocky-related project since 1976.
Well, the idea is that the reason I didn't want to write it because there's a whole new generation. 40 years has passed, and what worked in my generation doesn't exactly work.
But even though Stallone won't be in the movie, I think he'll still be there in a different way. You see, he's still a producer for Creed 3, and so far, nothing has been said about the plot of the highly anticipated movie. But Stallone's decision to leave makes it clear that Creed 3 will be different from the other movies.
Kind of an odd thing. Harrison Ford before he did Star Wars, I had just finished Rocky and...
in the franchise. So what really happened to Rocky in the previous Creed movie? Even though Rocky only played a supporting role in the first two Creed movies, they still gave him a lot of character development. In the first movie, he struggled to make Adonis his protege while also fighting cancer.
I kept saying to Al Pacino, say, come on, spread the wealth. De Niro, spread the wealth. And they kept getting... I know. I said, how much more do I have to do?
And throughout the movie, Adonis showed the seasoned boxer a new way to look at life. By Creed 2, Rocky had gotten over his illness, but he had to deal with the traumatic loss of his friend, Apollo Creed, while Ivan Drago and his son Victor came back into his life.
He got the money because I wanted him to really shut up. Giving me such a migraine, guys. You know?
Creed 2 was a hard emotional test for Rocky, who had to deal with the possibility of losing Adonis the same way he lost Apollo Creed in Rocky 4. Creed 2 showed the character agreeing to train Adonis again to fight Drago's son, and after Adonis beat Victor in their last fight,
Rocky's just pushing him forward. Of course, the ref would break that up, but and then cheap shot, boom.
Rocky went up to him, put out his hand to shake fists with his protege, and told him, "It's your time." It was truly a touching moment that served as a passing of the torch for Rocky. But what made this scene so special was that his time as a main character was over, and that it was time for Adonis Creed.
I think it's about a betrayal. You draw into certain situations in your life where you're...
to be in the spotlight. It was also a sign that Rocky was at peace, knowing that Adonis was skilled enough and fit enough to go on his own. But despite all this, Rocky didn't really get a proper send-off, did he? And when I saw the trailer again, it seems like Rocky Balboa might still be around.
And then to have a couple of young filmmakers, 27 years old, come in and find new life in the movie.
So even though Stallone chose not to be in the movie, I think he might still be able to make an appearance, even if it's just in a flashback or cameo, just when Milo Ventimiglia showed up as Rocky Balboa Jr. in Creed 2, and the fact that Rocky doesn't have a big part in Creed 3 probably won't hurt the movie. That's because the Creed series has set up a story that can be told independently. Yes, the property is definitely part of the Rocky universe, but it can also stand on its own as a story because of its universal themes of overcoming obstacles and finding your place in the world. Even though Sylvester Stallone not showing up in Creed 3 is a big change for the Rocky universe, I think it's about time the iconic character steps away from the center of the story. And if you're wondering about how Creed 3's shift to a darker tone and direction will be a big change, I think it might be just what the series needs. You see, so far, 8 Rocky movies have stuck to the same formula of being very dramatic and emotional. But even though this formula and tone have worked in the past, most stories need to improve and have more mature themes. Now that Michael B. Jordan's Adonis doesn't have Rocky on his side, his story could go in a darker direction since he was first introduced as a troubled kid. And with this darker plot, Adonis' story could actually come full circle. Speaking of darker plots, since Balboa isn't going to show up in Creed 3, fans are starting to wonder if he's going to die.
Nefarious, in my opinion, so horrible, because everyone made out well.
Well, here's the deal. I don't think the character who literally started the RCU, or Rocky Cinematic Universe, is gonna die off-screen. It would be a terrible way to treat the well-known character and Sylvester Stallone. On top of this would also make the tragic death of the main character's mentor in
this generation, everything's just changed. So a young filmmaker came to me and said, I have this idea of Apollo Creed had an illegitimate son.
third movie of the series, too similar to Mickey's death. It's also useless if Rocky already has a story that fits him perfectly. We all know how he stood for the best in people, and getting back together with his son was the best way for his story to end.
See George Lucas and the producer, and I can tell instantly, you know, when no one likes you. They look like this.
Whether it was sad or went into the dark, the Rocky series has always been inspiring. But now that Adonis Creed is in charge of the whole series, this is a great chance to inspire people in a new and exciting way. A compelling story about facing one's dark past and fighting through it until the light breaks through is definitely a welcome change for the franchise. And if the Creed movies keep going after Creed 3, I think shifting the tone to dark and less emotional is a good way to help the franchise stand on its own.
I even said it to Scorsese. So finally, at 76 years old, I go, now it's time, you know.
And continue. But then again, if Rocky were to die, there's going to be a lot of potential in the plot of Creed 3. You see, Rocky's death might make Creed 3 just like a copy of Rocky 3, but if it's done right, it could make Creed 3 even better. Let me explain. Since the first Rocky movie,
You cannot take on half the world with a knife. It just doesn't work. Yeah.
Sylvester Stallone has been the face of the Rocky franchise, making people able to relate to the Italian stallion for over 45 years. And this is exactly why Balboa's death in Creed 3 would hit even harder than Mickey's death, adding another tragic layer to the story of the upcoming movie.
And you have to do it with reckless abandon, but your timing was perfect, so.
Depending on how Rocky dies, the plot could be even better than how Rocky 3 dealt with Mickey's death. But Mickey's death was a little confusing. He died of a heart attack after being accidentally shoved by Clubber Lang during a fight in the locker room. Now, I know Clubber isn't a great person, but he surely didn't kill Mickey on purpose. So Rocky's anger at him has always seemed a little misplaced. It's still unknown what will happen to our Italian stallion.
You pay your dues. I felt the same way in Rocky, and Rocky Balboa. You do what you have to do. I did the right thing.
Whether he is killed or dies because his cancer returns, but I think Creed 3 could tell the story of Rocky's death even better than Rocky 3. Killing Rocky off would also free the Creed reboot franchise from the Rocky movies, since it would be able to focus on characters who aren't related to Rocky. And even though the first two Creed installments are great movies, they've been criticized for being too similar to the first Rocky movies. And as Rocky's death would be the last link to the original movies in the spin-off series, it would make it possible for Creed 3 and its sequels to tell their own stories without being influenced by the original movies. And that's all from my side on why Sylvester Stallone won't be in Creed 3.